going to hear about the City of Gold. We're going to hear from director Bob Blagden, Master 468 and Animatronics whiz Hugh Spight. A lot of bubble wrap involved in this chat. John, over to you.
So we'll start with an obvious question. We'll start with you, Hugh, if that's all right. Do you want to tell us about your journey to the City of Gold and the tripods? Briefly. We've only got 20 minutes.
Okay. My background is dance. I was a dancer for many years. Ended up being a movement coordinator with the Henson organisation, the Muppets, but I was brought in for Dark Crystal, and right from the beginning in pre-production. So I worked 2 years, and we were literally inventing creatures and building the costumes, making them come to life. And in one of them, Jim said he wants a creature that gallops across the countryside carrying the hero and the heroine, and that became the stilts, and that's my first introduction to stilts.
And that was the Land Strider. It's always a memorable sequence where they're galloping across with the little puppets on your back.
Yeah, 3 meters high.
Yeah, and you didn't want to fall on your face.
Yeah, it was a very dangerous costume to be in, actually. But and one day, we'd rehearse without the head, and the eyes were already controlled. So I had a battery inside here, and then we'd do a take, because I had heads on. And one day they put the head on me, and smoke started to come from inside the costume. Now it takes 3 hours to get into this costume. It's all foam injection molding. He reached in, all the wires out, they'd all melted. If that had ignited, I wouldn't be sitting here. But I'd have this film is made in memory of Hugh Spight.
Thank you, Hugh. I know that wasn't your only near-death experience, but we'll come on to that later. We'll give Bob a chance to speak.
Okay.
So tell us about your journey to the city. I know yours wasn't as fraught with danger.
Well, it was. But I'd first like to start to acknowledge 3 people that aren't with us. Jamie Theakston, director, Chris Penfold, and Robin Lobb, who was going to be here, but he couldn't be here. Robin actually was fundamental to the whole series. What the work he did. But I also want to thank this man, Richard. He took the risk to ask me to direct the 6 episodes, and that is quite an amazing thing for him to have done, because it launched my career as a drama director, and I went on to do many other things after that, but he threw me in the deep end. It was an amazing series to do those 6 episodes. My history before that was I was a designer, a graphic designer in BBC Television, but then I went on across to do directing, and I worked on a series called Jigsaw.
Brilliant series.
And I did 24 of those, which is a BAFTA-winning series, and working with the wonderful genius Clive Doig. And what we did in that series, I think, is a precursor to everything we did on the tripods, because we were doing things amazing, trickery, visual wizardry, and it was great fun. He taught me everything. Clive Doig, he just knew, he'd been in television some time, and he gave me the experience and the chance. And then within that series, we did little drama sketches. And I did a show reel of that. And because I wanted to cross over into drama full. And I took it to Jonathan Powell. Don't mention that name. And he said, "Loved your work, Bob, yes, and there's one person that really is looking for a director like you." And it was Richard Bates, and I have to thank him from my heart for letting me do it. But as I say, it was one hell of a challenge. As I say, it was in the deep end. It was doing things, we were pioneering things that had never been done before. And the work that Robin Lobb did, that we worked together, I was in 6 months in a room with him doing all the post-production effects. And especially I'm proud of what we did when John goes up to see the Cognos, and that was a virtual world, never been done before. And what I had to do was the voice was Chris Gard, Christopher Gard, but how do we know when he's speaking? So what we did, we came up with the idea that we had concentric circles which are radiating out to infinity, and then we made it voice activated. So every time he spoke, the circles contracted and moved. So you've now got a pair of lips for the for the Cognos, and that I feel was one of the great moments I think that we did. You know, we're in the world of virtual production now. Everything is digital, but what we were having to do in analog terms was just pioneering. And for instance, the opening shot of when the tripod goes into the city, that was a composite of 6 shots, which, as you know, in analog terms, you have to reduce the amount of times that you play back to add the extra shot, because every time you do, the quality goes down. It doesn't happen today with digital. It's prime quality all the time. Obviously, but the ingenuity of what the team did, and I must thank everybody in the team, for what they did. I thought that was an incredible thing that we pulled off, and seeing the compilation today, it kind of lifts your spirits to think, didn't we do well? Well done, everybody.
So Hugh, how did you get into character as a master? And I know you're involved in designing the animatronics and the costume, but did you get into character, so to speak, think this is how we're going to move in terms of being an alien creature, or was it what limited movement can I get out of this costume?
Yes, it was very limited, what you could do with movement in the costume. In fact, I practically never moved from the spot.
How was your vision?
No, nothing to be seen. When we worked in Dark Crystal, we had monitors. It was the first time monitors had been used, because sometimes we're doing costumes with maybe 2 people, 3 people in a costume. So you had to see what was going on, and the monitor was showing what the camera was showing. And that was quite a new thing, but with the master, we weren't there with that one. No, it was quite static. Yeah. It was quite static. And
we can now move on to that second near-death experience, if that's all right for you to relive.
Yes, second near-death experience. Well, if you remember the scene, the master's in his jacuzzi. Somebody says, somebody, wouldn't that be great?
It's a 5-star hotel.
So we said, right, great. So that was built, and we used dry ice, to give that effect, that sort of smoky effect that you get with dry ice. So I got into costume, and what nobody realised, including the safety firemen that were standing there, that when dry ice evaporates, it takes all the oxygen out of the air. Now I'm in this pit covered in dry ice. It filled up, and suddenly I'm beginning to know, I feel I can't breathe. And it got worse and it got worse. Fortunately, I had a mic. And the mic was switched on, and I start saying, "Get me out now!" I'm hardly able to breathe. So that was my second year. I'm sorry they had to destroy the set. They get it smashing everything, destroy the set to get to me. But that was the second near-death experience. Costumes can kill, by the way.
I mean, that was one of the most terrifying moments I remember.
You and me together.
Because we had switched talkback as
were you in the gallery? Were you in the gallery? I
was in the gallery, but I could talk to him direct.
Yeah.
So we had switched talkback. It was great. It's the sort of things we used to do on Jigsaw. I could talk to creatures in Jigsaw, and I could talk to them direct. So to have that communication, one-to-one communication, was vital. And then as soon as I knew he was in trouble, I said, just get him out there now. And I remember, we've got to do it now. And I was, very strongly saying those words. And thankfully,
Still here.
he did. And it was quite a frightening moment, I must say. It's something that what I remember of working 40 years ago, doing this series is one of the most, horrible moments. But life is full of things like that, not too often. But generally, the series was an amazing series to work on. I was using all my skills as a designer and working with Philip Lindley, who sadly is not with us here today, but working with a designer, we created how we could do the city. And then when we come to do the model shoot with the Luma crane, we had this special crane which Spielberg was using in Paris, and we got it brought to Elstree Studio, and BBC had just bought Elstree Studio, and there's the largest model they'd ever built, and it was only a third of the actual city. But to have a crane, a hothead they call them, to be able to have a 27-foot reach to swoop down, and what we wanted to achieve was made that main avenue like Fifth Avenue. But we had very few extras, so I
have to say though, the combination of the model work, the blue screen, the moving lifts and everything, it all works so well together, and it must have been a nightmare to kind of line that all up when you were editing it.
It was time. We weren't always up against the clock. I learned about that doing Jigsaw. You had to do a 30-minute show in one day, or they pull the plugs at the end.
Yeah, that's it. 10 o'clock.
You're out. You're out. So I knew, and that discipline, by doing Jigsaw, I applied that same discipline, getting through 10 days of studio, apart from all the location filming that we did. But going to places like De Norwich was amazing, absolutely breathtaking.
The power station.
Yeah, the power station, and then the escape into the. It was hot water because it was the water they jump into with the final fight at the end. That was from a nuclear power station.
I suppose John's lucky he had kids afterwards.
But it was a fabulous show to do, and as I say, it really threw me in the deep end, and thankfully I had the experience through Jigsaw and my graphic design mind, because I could think of composite shots and know how to put it together. But what I was quite pleased with an idea, I know it's in the book, but was how do we know what, if we're doing a shot in TC1, let's say, which is the biggest studio, television centre, it's all blue, or apart from a little bit of set that the actors come through the door and they stand there. How's that going to work with the composite shot? What we did, we used the mainframe computer at the BBC, and we did the coordinates of the city is a wireframe design of all the pyramids, etc. That we could call up on the computer to say, give me a 60-degree angle on the 34th floor of Tower C or whatever, and it would give you that. So therefore I knew that lining up that shot with the actor and the bit of the actual set that they were interacting with, I knew that 6 months later, when we did the model work, it was all going to be pieced together. And I don't know how we would have done it otherwise, because you need to have, it's like a blueprint for the final shot you're going to do. But, great stuff. It was, you were sort of buzzing on adrenaline all the time. It's will we get through it, do this, and horrible things like happen with Hugh that sort of, oh my goodness. But no, it did launch my career, and I have to thank Richard for giving me that chance.
Did you have a happy experience filming Hugh?
There was a wonderful creative opportunity to be given something to make it and design it.
Yeah.
And bubble wrap, somebody mentioned bubble wrap was really new in those days. So I got the the shape of this thing. I thought, how do I hide him? So that I had this idea of using bubble wrap. And then, I don't know if anybody knows what front axle projection is. Some technical people might know. It's like when your car headlights come to a sign at night and it flares. And it's basically tiny glass beads. And then I'd seen it on another film set, they put it onto a fabric. So I had the idea to, and this is the whole business of film, it's all being surrounded by creative people that can give you anything you want, basically. And I had the idea, if I could get that made like veins all through his body, and put a red light through to illuminate it, through without being seen. But I've forgotten the technical term for that. But anyway, it worked. So we could pulse it. So it looked like he had his veins were pulsating. So it was lovely to be part of sort of creative processes and being around people who said, "You want that? Right over, we do it." And John Stevenson, who was head of creatures in the Muppet People, from Jim Henson, he built it all for me, and it was a fascinating to do.
It was a memorable design.
Yeah, great fun. Yeah.
Definitely. How did you find the rest of the cast, Bob? Dividing time between the technical setup and talking through the cast.
Well, this was the hard thing, because obviously you've got the technical problems, trying to make it all work. But also I wanted to focus on the performance. I wasn't involved in the first series, so I didn't do the main casting. But I brought in people like John Woodvine, Christopher Garden, other people like that, and we worked together. I think we had fun, didn't we, John? We, especially in De Norwig, that was fantastic, and in the slate mine as well. That slate mine was unbelievable. Strange places you go to, but as I say, trying to get the performance I wanted to focus on that. But also knowing that I got to do things technically, and it's that balance. And to some extent, I feel my mind was so full of doing the technical side, because we wanted to reduce the number of passes we make on video. And I remember that we had TC1, TC2, TC3 all linked together, so we could get a luminance key, a color key, all sorts of keys, mats on a light box, so we can. It was just, and my mind was on that. I'm going to be looking at the performance, and because that's what it's all about. It's about the actors, everybody. The world you create for them is fabulous, but in the end, it's about performance.
Certainly, Will and Fritz go through a lot of emotion.
We did, yeah. We had. Some very strong moments, and performance-wise. I will be honest, I haven't looked at it for 40 years. I've seen clips on YouTube and all things like that, so I know what we did and what we did in the Pink Parrot and all these various locations within the... Oh! On cue! No, it for me, obviously, this was my real big break, and trying to balance everything. How I got through it, I went, wow, it was hard work, and I was actually pleased when we wrapped, in the studio. Is that a cut? Oh, right, okay, fine.
Oh, okay, I'm being gestured at, Chris. Okay, any final words from you two? I
just want to tell you one little bit of magic that we did, and that was with Robin Lobb. We've got the city, and you've got where John and everything, they look out across the city, and they have a big wide opening looking across the city. And when we came to do it in post-production, I thought, it doesn't look right. When we came up with this brilliant idea, is that to use a shot of the city, invert it, use it semi-transparent, and then it became glass.
Oh, yes.
And that is what made it look real. And it's the same with the tubes that go up and down. Putting the windows on them, it just made it real. And that's what I was trying to achieve. But, so I thank Robin Love for that.
That comes across very well. Hugh, any final words?
Yeah, just to say this is a wonderful business to be part of, my career, and I'm so grateful. Because I was in Star Wars, I became a movement coordinator in full body puppetry. And I do conventions all over the place. And I just say sometimes very briefly, and I say, as a dancer, it's a very short career. And so there's no golden handshake, there's not even a pension. And I say, but this is payback time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob Blagden and Hugh Spight. Thank you.
Thank you.